Fact 1. The Mississippi Bubble of John Law, Paris, 1717. In the stifling air, the scent of expensive floral perfumes clashes with the sharp, pungent stench of cheap gin. John Law, a high-stakes gambler on the run, seduces the court with promises of golden mountains hidden within the Louisiana marshes. Even the regent of France, Philippe II, falls under the spell, handing over the literal keys to the national treasury. Freshly printed paper banknotes flood the streets of Paris, fluttering through the air like a storm of autumn leaves. When the public realizes the promised gold mines are but rotting, alligator-infested quagmires, the grand empire of cards collapses in an instant. Overnight, the elite are reduced to beggars, clutching worthless scraps of paper that cannot even purchase a single loaf of bread. The collective fury of the betrayed masses marks the violent beginning of the end for the ancient French monarchy. Fact 2. The Paradise Kingdom of Gregor MacGregor, London, 1822. The fog is so dense, so heavy with soot and moisture, that it can be felt upon the very tongue. General Gregor MacGregor proclaims himself the sovereign prince of Poyais, a mythical paradise tucked away in Central America. He shamelessly sells off fertile, non-existent plots of land to greedy bankers and desperate veterans of the Napoleonic Wars. Hopeful souls cross the Atlantic dreaming of sugar and rum, only to find lethal jungles, barren sand, and the agonizing sting of yellow fever. As his victims draw their final breaths on a foreign shore, MacGregor savors the finest vintage wines in the heart of Paris. He managed to sell an entire sovereign kingdom that existed only in the ink of his lies, leaving behind hundreds of shallow graves and the hollowed-out pockets of the British elite. Fact 3. The catastrophic collapse of the South Sea Company, 18th century Britain. The very air of the city is thick with the suffocating scent of pure, unadulterated greed. The South Sea Company lures the nation with the promise of a total monopoly on trade within the legendary Spanish colonies. Even the brilliant Isaac Newton, a man who could calculate the very motion of distant stars, found himself unable to measure the sheer depths of human madness. In the crash, he forfeits £20,000, a truly colossal fortune that would be worth millions in today's world. When the bubble finally bursts, the screams of ruined noblemen echo from the hallowed halls of Parliament down to London's darkest, most desperate slums. The company, which never dispatched a single successful merchant ship, shattered public trust in honest trade for decades, leaving nothing behind but the cold, gray ashes of hope. Fact 4. The golden smoke of Edward Kelly. The end of the 16th century. The rhythmic flickering of candles in a pitch-black laboratory, thick with the suffocating stench of sulfur and the dust of ancient parchment. Edward Kelly manipulates Emperor Rudolph II, swearing he possesses the forbidden secret to transmute rusted lead into pure shining gold. Driven by a desperate thirst for absolute power, the emperor pours his vast riches into blazing furnaces that yield only acrid smoke and masterful lies. When the illusion shatters and the imperial treasury is bled dry, the self-proclaimed alchemist is cast into the damp, lightless dungeon of a fortress. He realizes far too late that the only thing he truly managed to turn into ash was the limitless trust and the very might of an entire empire. Fact 5. The Cursed Necklace of Marie Antoinette, Versailles, 1785. The rhythmic rustle of expensive silk and the sharp, stinging scent of dangerous court intrigue. The swindler Jean de la Motte convinces Cardinal de Rohan that the Queen desperately craves a necklace featuring 647 diamonds. The Cardinal, desperately seeking the court's favor, blindly purchases the priceless jewelry on credit. Yet Marie Antoinette remains blissfully unaware that such a scandalous transaction ever took place in her name. The diamonds are broken apart, the stones scattering across Europe, as the grand scandal ignites the fuse of the people's smoldering hatred. This affair did more than ruin a cardinal, it sharpened the cold steel of the guillotine for the entire royal family of France. Fact 6. The Sale of the Eiffel Tower by Victor Lustig, Paris, 1925. The Iron Lady is slowly being consumed by rust, as the city whispers in hushed tones about her inevitable demolition. Victor Lustig, a man possessing the refined manners of a diplomat and the predatory soul of a wolf, assembles the city's top scrap metal magnates in a lavish hotel. The air is thick with the aroma of premium cigars and the palpable fear of missing out on the greatest deal of the century. He masterfully convinces them that the government is covertly selling the tower off for scrap metal. One businessman, blinded by a desperate hunger for prestige, hands Lustig a suitcase overflowing with cash, plus a massive bribe to seal the deal. As the con man vanishes across the border, the swindled mogul stays silent in his shame, while the tower remains standing, a silent, metallic monument mocking human naivete. Fact 7. The Auction of the Roman Empire. Rome, 193 AD. The scent of the murdered emperor's blood still lingers in the palace corridors, yet the Praetorian Guard is already putting the entire world up for sale. Didius Julianus, an ob, he stands beneath the towering fortress walls, shouting out sums that could feed entire imperial provinces for years. For 25,000 sestertii per soldier, he buys himself a crown. But gold, as he will soon learn, cannot buy loyalty. 66 days later, the scent of fear replaces the aroma of triumph as an enraged populace and rival legions arrive to reclaim what money can never truly own. Fact 8. The Portuguese banknote affair of Alves Reis Lisbon, 1924. The intoxicating scent of fresh ink fills the room as crisp, brand-new banknotes stream directly from the industrial press. Alves Reis, a master of deception and forged documents, manipulates a London printing house into believing he acts on behalf of the Portuguese government. He prints hundreds of thousands of authentic banknotes that are physically indistinguishable from those sanctioned by the state. Reis establishes his own bank and aggressively acquires land and stocks, nearly seizing total economic control over the entire nation. As the truth finally emerges, the entire national economy reels under the crushing weight of a massive financial shock. The man who conjured wealth from nothingness leaves behind only ruinous inflation and a profound distrust in the very concept of paper currency. Fact 9. The Great Diamond Hoax. Wyoming, 1872. The scorching wind kicks up blinding dust while the relentless sun sears the eyes of those who dare to look across the plains. Two ordinary prospectors present a leather pouch filled with raw rubies and diamonds to the elite bankers of San Francisco, claiming a secret discovery. World-renowned experts, including the very head of Tiffany & Company, succumb to the fever of this collective financial madness. Investors pour millions into a barren desert that the swindlers had secretly seeded with industrial-grade stones purchased on the streets of London. When it is finally revealed that the stones in the dirt bear unnatural, machine-made facets, the grand financial bubble shatters instantly. The finest financial minds are left with nothing amidst the scorching sand, clutching worthless glass trinkets instead of their promised billions. Fact 10. The white gold of Johann Bacher, Dresden, the early 18th century. The stifling, oppressive heat of the kilns and the acrid, choking smoke of the alchemist's laboratory. The young alchemist Johann Bacher promises King Augustus the Strong the forbidden secret of turning base metals into pure, shining gold. The king, obsessed with endless luxury, keeps his alchemist under heavy guard like a prized, exotic animal. Years pass in failure and the constant terror of punishment until Bacher accidentally stumbles upon the lost secret of white porcelain. This is the true white gold, bringing the kingdom unimaginable wealth and legendary royal profits. But for the inventor himself, this miraculous discovery becomes nothing more than a magnificent, gilded cage. He dies at the age of 37, his body withered by toxic chemicals and captivity, having gifted his monarch a fortune while never buying his own freedom. Fact 11. The Panama Disaster of Scotland. Edinburgh, at the very end of the 17th century. The air is heavy, with a scent of damp wool and a piercing bone-deep cold that shudders through the entire city. Scotland, fueled by dreams of imperial grandeur, commits half of its entire national wealth into a single colony in the Darien Gap of Panama. Propagandists paint vivid pictures of a lush paradise where gold reportedly lies scattered on the ground, waiting to be gathered. But instead of promised riches, The Scots find only relentless tropical monsoons, lethal clouds of malaria-carrying mosquitoes, and the thunderous roar of hostile Spanish cannons. The lifeblood and capital of an entire nation vanish into the unforgiving, stagnant mud of the Central American jungle. The kingdom is pushed to the brink of absolute bankruptcy and is forced to sell its very independence to England to pay off its crushing debts. It stood as the most expensive blunder in history, a mistake that redrew the map of the world, all for a single impossible dream of distant shores. Fact 12. The Great Stock Exchange Fraud. London, February 1814. The city air is thick with the scent of soot and simmering anxiety. Suddenly, a mud-drenched officer gallops into the port, screaming that Napoleon has been killed. The exchange erupts into total madness. Government bond prices skyrocket, soaring toward the heavens like a flock of panicked birds. Investors are seized by ecstasy, buying up every scrap of paper in the unwavering belief that the long war has finally reached its end. But while the masses celebrate, the masterminds led by Lord Cochrane are silently offloading their assets at astronomical, peak prices. When the news breaks that the Corsican is alive and well, the market plunges headfirst into a bottomless abyss. Pure ecstasy instantly turns into a burning, bitter despair, as the massive fortunes of many lords evaporate into ash within a single, sunny hour. Fact 13. The donation of Constantine, the gloomy shadowed halls of the Middle Ages. The air is thick with the scent of holy incense and the dust of ancient parchment that crumbles into nothingness beneath the touch of time. The church unveils a monumental document, allegedly signed by the hand of the Emperor Constantine the Great himself. Within these lines, the emperor surrenders Rome and the entire Western Roman Empire into the absolute sovereign power of the Pope. For long centuries, monarchs bowed their heads in fear, terrified of violating the holy will of the supreme divine ruler. They paid astronomical taxes and forfeited vast territories, placing their absolute faith in every single word written upon that forgery. Until the 15th century, when a brilliant scholar proved that the Latin used in the text was far too modern for the era it claimed to represent. A majestic power that stood on a lie for 1,000 years finally trembled, revealing to the world that even faith can be weaponized for the greatest robbery in history. Fact 14. The Captain of Köpenick. Berlin, 1906. The sharp scent of fresh paint and perfectly pressed military wool. Wilhelm Voigt, a destitute shoemaker, purchases a second-hand Prussian army captain's uniform from a small, cluttered shop. In these times, the sheer authority of the uniform proves far more powerful than common sense or logic. He gathers a squad of soldiers right off the street, orders them to seize the town hall of Köpenick, and personally arrests the mayor. While the soldiers stand guard, the captain calmly empties the city treasury down to the very last penny. The people bowed low before an empty suit, their eyes blinded by the cloth, utterly failing to see the man was never there. It was a masterclass in psychological manipulation, where blind reverence for symbols became the ultimate key to a vault filled with gold. Fact 15. The inheritance of Sir Francis Drake, the American Midwest during the dark days of the Great Depression. The air is thick with dust and desperation. Oscar Hartzell weaves an incredible tale for thousands, promising the forgotten riches of the legendary pirate Sir Francis Drake. He claims the British Crown is secretly hoarding billions of dollars, riches that can only be unlocked by his investors and Drake's true heirs. Desperate men and women part with their final pennies, praying for a literal golden rain to fall upon them from across the Atlantic. Hartzell lives like a monarch in London, fueling the fantasy for years with a constant stream of letters describing imaginary battles in the high courts. Even as he stood trial for his crimes, his devoted followers continued to scrape together their last pennies to fund his legal defense. It was a macabre dance upon the bones of the legendary privateer, where the crowd's insatiable greed proved deeper than the darkest ocean abyss. Fact 16. Tulip mania. Holland, 1637. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and pungent sea salt. A simple, ordinary flower bulb becomes more valuable than a magnificent mansion in the heart of Amsterdam. Ordinary people sacrifice their farms and priceless family heirlooms just to possess a single tulip, fueled by the blind belief that prices will rise forever. It was a frantic dance of madness, where even the most seasoned merchants lost their sanity over the vibrant allure of a few petals. When the market collapsed in an instant, it was revealed that the treasures people died for were nothing more than roots rotting in the cold, wet earth. The nation descends into absolute chaos, leaving yesterday's millionaires with nothing but empty baskets and shattered lives. They curse the very day they succumb to the seductive, deadly magic of the flowers. Fact 17. The Postal Pyramid of Charles Ponzi. Boston, 1920. The air is thick with the smell of cheap tobacco and fresh printer's ink. Charles Ponzi, a man with a captivating, magnetic smile. He promises staggering, unbelievable profits through the simple arbitrage of international postal coupons. People form endless lines to hand over their life savings, mesmerized as the earliest investors walk away with mountains of gold. Yet, no real business exists. It is merely an endless conveyor belt, where the cash from new victims is used to pay off the old ones. Even seasoned police officers, sworn to protect the public, recklessly invest their own hard-earned salaries into this glittering financial mirage. When the pyramid finally collapsed, millions of dollars evaporated into thin air, leaving behind only a name that became an eternal symbol of financial ruin and human naivety. Fact 18. The Spanish prisoner, the late 19th century, the dry rustle of parchment, and the heavy, pungent scent of red sealing wax. Wealthy gentlemen receive clandestine letters from an allegedly noble grandee, supposedly rotting in the depths of a Spanish dungeon. The writer promises to share a colossal fortune in exchange for help in securing his freedom and rescuing his beautiful, distressed daughter. Sheer greed, intertwined with a desperate desire to play the hero, completely blinds the rational mind. Bankers and noblemen dispatched thousands of pounds to untraceable addresses, all hoping for a royal reward and everlasting gratitude. No such prisoner ever existed. This masterful ruse, fueled by profound isolation and a desperate craving for adventure, bled fortunes dry for many decades, proving that even the most sagacious minds are willing to pay for a fabrication, provided it promises the allure of effortless wealth. Fact 19. The Carnegie heiress Cleveland at the dawn of the 20th century. The dazzling brilliance of diamonds and the rich aroma of premium cigars. Cassie Chadwick convinces the banking elite that she is the illegitimate daughter of steel magnate Andrew Carnegie. She presents forged promissory notes worth millions of dollars, and the titans of finance, holding their collective breath, fling open their massive safes for her. They grant her enormous loans on nothing more than her word, terrified of offending the daughter of the wealthiest man on earth. While the real Andrew Carnegie had no inkling of her existence, Cassie Chadwick was acquiring sprawling estates and hosting magnificent, gluttonous banquets. When the deception was finally unmasked, it became clear that her entire empire rested solely on a single confident gaze and a masterful ability to exploit the fears of the world's most powerful men. Fact 20. Count Cagliostro and the Elixir of Life. Paris, the 18th century. The air is heavy with the pungent scent of smoldering herbs and the stifling weight of ancient, dust-covered velvet. The self-styled Count Cagliostro appears within the royal courts of Europe, claiming to have lived for 1,000 years and possessing the ancient secret to transmute common stone into gold. Kings and cardinals whisper of his miracles, trading heavy sacks of gold for a few precious drops of his magical elixir and the fleeting chance to speak with spirits. He was a master of grand theatrical deception, skillfully masking simple chemical reactions as profound divine revelations. When the illusion finally dissolved, Cagliostro found himself in a cold cell, leaving monarchs with nothing but empty vials, and the bitter realization that they had purchased nothing more than an expensive portion of ordinary water, seasoned with a masterful lie. Fact 21. The Tichborne Claimant. London, late 19th century. The air is thick with the scent of damp wool and the heavy atmosphere of ancient, dusty courtrooms. An ordinary butcher shop in Australia becomes the unlikely starting point for a scam that would shock all of Britain. A man by the name of Castro declares that he is the long-lost heir to the massive fortune of Baronet Tichborne, presumed dead at sea. Lady Tichborne, blinded by her profound grief, somehow recognizes her refined son in this coarse and unpolished stranger. For years, he lives in absolute luxury, taking out massive loans against his future inheritance, while the aristocracy raises millions to support him. When it is finally revealed that the baronet cannot speak a single word of French, a language the true heir spoke fluently, the grand illusion shatters into 1,000 pieces, leaving the investors buried under mountains of debt and the bitter, lingering taste of another man's intricate lies. Fact 22. Gold from the Sea, New England, 1897. The stinging sensation of salt spray on the skin and the relentless, rhythmic roar of the Atlantic waves. Reverend Jernigan boldly proclaims that he has engineered a miraculous machine capable of extracting pure gold directly from the Atlantic depths. He showcases gleaming gold bars to awestruck investors, allegedly fished from the very depths of the ocean floor. Politicians and powerful magnates pour millions into his venture, dreaming of transforming the vast ocean into an infinite national bank. In truth, the miracle machine was nothing more than a common iron chest, where a secret diver surreptitiously planted the gold under the cover of night. As his victims stared hopefully at the horizon, the Reverend fled to Europe with suitcases bursting with cash, leaving his followers alone with the vast, profitless ocean. Fact 23. The Perpetual Motion Machine of John Keely, Philadelphia, 1872. Amidst hissing steam and the acrid stench of machine oil, John Keely claims he has unlocked a vibratory force, capable of powering locomotives with just a single glass of water. He strikes a tuning fork, and as the frequency resonates, his colossal machines begin to roar into life. For a quarter of a century, the world's most powerful industrialists, including a multi-millionaire's widow, fund his mysterious and secretive experiments. They are driven by a singular, desperate desire to become the masters of a new, limitless source of energy. Only after the inventor's death are the secret copper pipes and high-pressure air canisters finally discovered hidden beneath the laboratory floorboards. The alleged force of nature was revealed to be nothing more than a common pump, while millions of dollars vanished into the hollow vibrations of a master liar. A man who successfully sold the entire world a magnificent, impossible dream of limitless and free power. Fact 24. The Lost Dauphin of France, Paris, at the dawn of the 19th century, shadows of the guillotine and the heavy scent of ancient secrets. The watchmaker Naundorff emerges from obscurity, boldly claiming he is Louis XVII, the son of the executed king, who allegedly escaped from prison. He meticulously describes royal birthmarks and intimate secrets of palace life, details that only the true prince could have possibly known. Dozens of former courtiers place their faith in him, financing his lavish lifestyle and his endless, grueling legal battles for the throne. He passes away with a gravestone bearing the bold inscription King of France. It took 200 years for a genetic test to prove that the monarch was merely an ordinary craftsman, who for decades sold a nation the hope of returning to ancient glory, bleeding the pockets of loyal monarchists dry. Fact 25. The Project of Great Advantage, London, 1720. The city is gripped by a relentless financial fever. Amidst hundreds of emerging companies, the most audacious one finally appears. An unknown gentleman opens an office for an, quote, undertaking of great advantage, but nobody to know what it is. It sounds like a joke. But in an era of absolute insane greed, people completely lose their minds. By noon, he collects thousands of pounds in deposits from merchants and lords, terrified of missing the chance of the century. By the afternoon, the office doors are already bolted shut, and the mysterious businessman vanishes into the shadows through the back exit. It was fraud in its purest, most cynical form, selling absolute nothingness to people far too paralyzed by the fear of missing out to ask even a single logical question. Fact 26. Basil Zaharoff, the Merchant of Death, Greece, 1886. The air reeks of rust, machine oil, and sea salt. Basil Zaharoff sells the government a submarine that can barely float and is even less likely to dive. Immediately after, he convinces the Turks they need 2 vessels to counter the Greeks' secret weapon, then exploits Russian fears of a Turkish threat to sell them even more useless iron. Wealth flows like a river, while the vessels rot in the ports, useless for combat. a macabre dance on the brink of war, where the fear of nations turned into pure gold for the man who sold death as salvation. Fact 27. The Crawford Legacy. Paris, late 19th century. The air is thick with the scent of fine powder, polished wood, and old money. Therese Humbert proclaims she has inherited millions from a mysterious American named Crawford. The money is allegedly locked away in a massive safe within her estate, forbidden to be opened until the conclusion of the endless legal proceedings. For 20 long years, the French elite grant her enormous high-interest loans, placing their absolute faith in that impenetrable steel box. When the police finally force the lock, they find nothing inside but a single old, yellowed newspaper and a few worthless copper buttons. A single woman held the nation's financial elite hostage, using only an empty box and the unshakable authority of her own voice. Fact 28. Miller's 520%. Brooklyn, 1899. The air is thick with the heavy scent of coal smoke, gritty dust, and the stale smell of cheap beer. William Miller, a seemingly ordinary clerk, promises his investors an incredible 10% profit every single week. The crowds descend into madness, shoving and clawing at one another in endless lines, desperate to hand over their very last dollar. He marketed it as a prestigious investment syndicate, but in truth, it was the perfect money-extracting machine, operating faster than any state-run bank. In just a few short months, he amassed a fortune of over $1 million, a staggering sum for the era, proving that the primal thirst for instant wealth is more powerful than any law of mathematics, logic, or basic human common sense. Fact 9. The Cardiff Giant. New York, 1869. The air is thick with the scent of raw earth, rain, and a palpable wave of collective terror. On an ordinary farm, a colossal fossilized figure of a man, standing 10 feet tall, is dragged from the dark depths of the earth. Thousands of eager pilgrims pay for tickets, driven by the fervent belief that they have finally discovered irrefutable proof of the existence of biblical giants. Even the most respected scholars engage in fierce debate over the discovery, while the wealthy elite scramble to purchase this fossilized miracle for themselves. In reality, the giant was merely a slab of gypsum, secretly buried a year prior by atheist George Hull as a grand experiment to mock the gullibility of the faithful. Once the hoax was exposed, the public continued to pay, drawn by the strange desire to witness their own folly carved permanently in stone. It stood as the ultimate triumph of absurdity, an era where a magnificent lie proved far more lucrative and enduring than the simple truth. Fact 30. The Lord versus the Devil of Wall Street. New York City, 1872. The dazzling brilliance of fine crystal and the intoxicating rich aroma of the world's most expensive cognac. The self-styled Lord Gordon masterfully manipulates the railway tycoon Jay Gould, convincing him that he holds the key to seizing absolute control of a strategic corporation. Gould, infamously known as the most cunning predator of Wall Street, surrenders a staggering $1 million in cash and shares to the charming imposter. When the Lord suddenly vanishes into the frozen wilderness of Canada, the mask falls to reveal nothing but a common petty criminal with a dark, sordid past. The most powerful man in the financial universe becomes a laughingstock, realizing that even his iron instincts were no match for a brilliant actor who played the role of a British aristocrat to perfection. Fact 31. Princess Caribou. Bristol, 1817. The air is thick with the brine of the harbor and the mesmerizing rustle of strange, exotic silk fabrics never before seen in England. A young woman, adorned in mysterious and exotic attire, begins to speak in a strange tongue that defies the understanding of every linguist in the land. She performs bizarre rituals, praying to the sun from the rooftops of manor houses and sketching indecipherable hieroglyphs, rapidly becoming the greatest sensation in all of Bristol. Scholars struggle to decipher her origins, while artists compete for the honor of painting her portrait, convinced they are looking at the true heiress of the distant island of Javasu. But the fairy tale shatters when a simple boarding house owner recognizes the princess as her former servant, Mary Baker, a cobbler's daughter from Devon. She was merely a poor girl who yearned so desperately for a different life that she forced all of England to believe in an illusion that never truly existed. Fact 32. The Mechanical Turk. Vienna, 1770. The air is thick with the scent of machine oil and ancient wood. Before the stunned eyes of the public, the automaton begins to move its arms, shifting chess pieces with uncanny, mechanical precision. It defeats emperors and scholars alike, forcing the entire world to believe that a machine has finally and definitively surpassed the human mind. In truth, behind every calculated movement of the machine stood a living soul, a master player concealed within a cramped compartment of mirrors and deceptive gears. It was history's first ghost of artificial intelligence, a magnificent illusion that proved far more potent than reality itself. Fact 33. The Great Moon Hoax. New York City, 1835. The Sun newspaper publishes a world-shaking sensation. Through a revolutionary new telescope, life has been discovered on the moon. Readers are enthralled by descriptions of winged batmen, azure unicorns, and cities built from pure crystal. Circulation rockets to the stars. The world devours every word, completely blinded by an insatiable hunger for the miraculous. It was the final, definitive proof. We do not see what truly is, but only what we are too terrified to disbelieve. 33 facts. One single, eternal story of human naivete.